Wow, Lee, that was touching. So that's a tough one to follow. But I'll try to give you a little opportunity to understand the next big technology wave that's going to impact your business and literally, I believe, every industry we have. And so you remember these BlackBerry devices. They showed up about 20 years ago, and we were sort of wondering, why in the world would you ever need mobile email? Now we wish we didn't have it, but back then we started to look at it, and we started to see productivity in terms of the ability to have information flow outside the four walls of the office and come out and be able to start making decisions faster and faster. And then beyond email, we're like, wow, let's start looking at how we might be able to tap into back office applications, start to approve work orders, and start to do more and more with these devices. Well, we're on the wave or the cusp of the next big wave of technology, and this happens about every 15 to 20 years. And that's right about where we are, and that is virtual and augmented reality. So much as we looked at with our businesses, how we're going to mobilize business processes and become not tethered to our office, we're now in the wave of starting to virtualize and augment those same business processes. And I believe this is going to have an even bigger impact than the mobile device has had on our business, on how we buy as a consumer and how we work with each of our industries. And there's science behind that. So I certainly am not going to go to the level that Lee could there, but I'm going to try to explain a little bit of the science behind why the brain is able to start to operate at a different level when we provide more information that's capable of handling. And you also hear this being described as the cognitive revolution. So we talked a little bit about that in the last piece. So the big issue we have right now is our physical world is 3D. We live in a 3D world, we see in a 3D world, but all of our information is captured in 2D pieces of paper, displays, screens, and so we're only able to capture a small amount of that information. Augmented and virtual reality allows us to start to overlay or superimpose that data and that digital world on the physical world. And we'll talk through some examples of what you're likely seeing today that you may not realize is augmented reality or virtual reality. And that combination of human and machine are allowing us to see very significant increases in productivity, in training cycles, workplace safety, and other areas. Okay, so one of the areas that virtual and augmented reality tap into is the brain's ability to absorb information, and 80 and 90% of that is done through vision. Two pieces that you need to be aware of that impact this is cognitive load and cognitive distance. So the cognitive load is our mental capacity for absorbing and processing information. As we do more and more tasks, that taxes our cognitive load. And we'll touch on some examples there. Cognitive distance is the space or time between when you receive information and then how you're acting on it. So a good example is doing GPS directions on your smartphone. So you've got to look down on the phone, you've got to see the map, you've got to see where it's telling you to go. You're looking up, you're looking at the real world, trying to figure out, is this the right road? Am I turning here, or is it the next turn that I have to do? So think of that, that's cognitive distance. And each of these tasks that your brain is having to do is eliminating the ability to do other things. So you've got a string of tasks that are being done there, you're thinking about the GPS information versus how many people have a heads-up display in their car that's projecting something on the screen. One, few here. So that's a great example of augmented reality. Now you're no longer needing to look at this device and process that information. It's overlaid right on the real world for you and it's showing you exactly where to turn. And that's what augmented reality is starting to be able to do to us, and we're applying that in a lot of industrial processes. And we'll talk about field service, training, and other areas where now no longer do you have to be looking at a manual or a laptop. You have that information overlaid directly in front of you, and you're able to be hands-free and performing that task. And some very significant impacts on productivity and cost. So just a couple more on the science here. So our brain is only utilizing 1 kilobit per second in terms of optical nerve bandwidth when we're reading. So very little. We don't know how small that is. But it has the capacity of running 8 megabits per second. So how do we start to tap into our brain's ability and optical nerve to be able to absorb a lot more information? And that's when we start thinking about what we can provide in a virtual world or an augmented world. In the case of virtual reality, we can literally give you 360-degree view of information. So don't think about gaming. Now think about being in a room and you're being able to look at whiteboards, web pages, 3D objects of an engine or a machine, a video running, all of that information around you, being able to quickly look and scan and process that versus tabbing through different applications or looking at different manuals. That information presented to you in a whole new way is allowing us to train faster and more effectively. So one more little stat here. So this is some research that was done. It's called the Code of Learning, but if you can't see it in the back, we only retain 10% of what we read and 20% of what we hear versus 90% of what we actually do. So the ability to actually practice and do things has been proven to be significantly more impactful in terms of retaining that information and being able to act on it. When you think about how we apply that in virtual reality or augmented reality, you're now actually doing that yourself. You're in the virtual world. You're actually interacting with the object you may be being trained on, servicing an engine or an ATM machine or providing information to, as we'll show an example with the U.S. Air Force, their flight technicians on fixing fighter jets. So that's one of the big pieces there. So let's spend a minute diving into specific use cases and showing how in just a few functional areas how this is being applied and what some companies are already realizing significant competitive advantage. So I'm going to touch on logistics, field service, product design and engineering, and then also sales and marketing. And last but not least, I'll also touch on training in each of these areas. So from a logistic perspective, about 20% of all operations costs are driven out of warehouse operations, and 65% of that cost is around picking items off shelves. So you think about how it's done largely today, there's either a sheet of paper, someone's walking around, looking at item or bin numbers, pulling that off the shelf. The ability now to have a piece of glass in front of their face that highlights and reads a barcode or a scan that is then giving you the green check mark that you've got the right part and item to quickly pull that off the shelf. DHL has been experimenting this with one of their warehouse facilities. They're seeing 25% increase in productivity gains for the pickers in their warehouse. Even more impressive is Intel in one of their warehouses has been testing this as well. They're seeing 29% productivity gains in the warehouse picking operations. They're also seeing near zero defect rates because no longer is it missing the number or the right part. It's being scanned, it's giving the check mark to pull it off the shelf, and so it eliminates the human error of mispicking an item. And then also they tested a new hires putting on the glass versus someone being traditionally trained in their traditional methods. Without having any training, the new hire is operating 15% faster than someone going through their traditional training methods. So right there, you think about the ROI on deploying these kind of solutions are very impactful in these early days. So that's an interesting one, I thought, from a logistics perspective. Field service gets even more interesting from my perspective, and this is an area where you're starting to see augmented reality take hold, and you're probably familiar with, obviously, Snapchat, or your kids are, and you're starting to experiment on the consumer side of things on augmented reality. But the ability now to have a piece of glass or a tablet or a phone and be able to overlay that over a physical object and it start to read out and recognize what it's seeing, whether it be an engine or a particular part, and being able to walk that technician through step by step as to how they're supposed to fix that product. Xerox has been experimenting with this, and they've had some very impressive results. 20% increase in productivity of their field engineers that are going out servicing the Xerox machines. This is another area, the first call resolution. I believe this number, we're going to see this over the next few years for field services. For field service employees that deploy augmented reality, this will approach probably 90 to 100%. There's no reason why you're out in the field now that you can't fix the particular problem unless maybe you're missing a part. Because they're now able to provide step-by-step instructions. They have a remote mentor, meaning you can see what I see. So if they get stuck, they can call back to a senior technician that's looking exactly what their issue they're running into. And you can telestrate, actually literally draw a digital overlay of an area that they need to go work on and be able to help them through that. And so they've seen a 67% increase in first call resolution because no longer is a junior tech getting stuck. They've got the ability to have information in front of them to help themselves, and then if they really get stuck, they can call in a senior expert. This is leading to their customer satisfaction rate reaching the highest they've ever had at 95% in terms of their field service teams there. So you think that's going to help them sell more Xerox machines? You bet. So very impressive there. I've got a short video here. I had to cut it down quite a bit, so hopefully you can follow. This video, before it plays, I think you may have to do it. Okay, one more click. Is a application we built for the U.S. Air Force. So one of the big problems the U.S. Air Force has is the flight line technicians takes about 10 years to get proficient in servicing the GI aircraft. And as you can imagine, most of the airmen are not staying in for 10 years. They're in there for 4 years, 5 years, 6 years. So how do you take that 10-year cycle to get a senior technician fully expert on an F-15 and start to shrink that down to a much shorter window, be it 2 years, 3 years? That's the goal they've set. Can we get this down to 2 years in terms of the training period, or providing the tools to the technicians so that they can operate at a much more senior level? So what we've built, we've utilized the Microsoft HoloLens in this example. If you haven't seen that, we've got one out that you can check out. It's a visor that provides digital information. And we're using this in 2 ways. One in training, where we have a hologram of an F-15 and the tech can walk through the procedure. That's a digital overlay, and they can literally walk around and go through and look at some YouTube videos on the screen on how they're supposed to do the repair. But then when they get actually out on the flight line, you'll see this digital overlay snaps directly onto the aircraft wing, which they're fixing. So there's no longer a hologram, it's actually the physical object, and they're able then to see the screws, the rivets come out, and actually walk them through step-by-step processes. So you'll see this here. It's only about a minute and a half or so.
Koning's dashboard here. This contains all of the things that you have remember, so we're going to go ahead and click on that work order. So now select the one that's open right now, location of where the aircraft is, so we'll close that. And now I can go in and I can look at the LRU. So I'm going to go ahead and jump in here and take a look at that LRU facility. And I can pull up everything from the parts, ready. I notice there's and you can see it's a full-size F-15. I can walk around it, I can look at the tail number. It is formed to repair. So now I can go through my checklist right on the aircraft and get walk completely free. Next. Next. So I'm stepping through all of the different tasks. As you can see, we have, I'm going to remove the cover plate here. I go in, I can really take a good look at this part. Get way down in there and even take a look at it. Next, founder assistant here. And I think
we can also estimate systematics to come around here.
That's it. Next. Next.
Master Sergeant Burns, 7-level review. Next.
Yeah. Got it. So we're going to have another technician come out. So I'm going to leave the airplane apart. I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. I'm going to return to my job board. And you can see now I have this required procedure has been recorded. So this is great for forensic purposes. It's also fantastic for other maintenance. I'm going to go ahead and log out.
Okay, so I'll explain a couple things there. So what you're seeing there is actually what the technician's seeing, and that's actually what they're visualizing through the headset. The first call was to a subject matter assist, where a technician was helping them in teletraining there. The second call you saw there was the Air Force has a 7-level review process. So when every inspection is done, they require someone to physically go out there and inspect the repair and sign off on it. So now they're experimenting with, can they allow the headset to show someone back in a central location to review the repair and then sign off on that remotely. Obviously that saves a ton of time. And with that, also have all the forensic information on the video taping of the entire process. So if there ever was an issue with the aircraft, then they can go back and look and pull up the repair logs and say, okay, this was done properly or not properly. But you've now got a log or repair each of those significant work items that are being done there. So that's just one example there of what we're starting to see in terms of assisting technicians in the field. From a sales and marketing perspective, so this can go everywhere from basic consumer applications that you may be playing with, from placing furniture in your house remotely. I don't know if anyone saw the Williams-Sonoma acquisition in terms of how important this is becoming for companies. Williams-Sonoma just spent $114 million buying a small augmented reality application company because they think it's that strategic to them being able to start to have a competitive advantage on selling their products and services. So they give you one example there. But also the ability, if you have complex product or machines, for GE, you're not going to go bring a locomotive out to a customer site, but you can in a virtual world. You can put on a headset, you can walk around and tour the locomotive. You're selling train engines or you're selling aircraft. You can bring a subject matter expert into the meeting. No longer you have to have your pre-sales engineers travel on every site visit with your customers. Your salesperson could be out with the client and virtually bring in the virtual space, a senior technician to walk around the product, describe it, and do the demo there versus having them physically go out there. And we've got an example of that out in the hall as well. So this has significantly decreased your time and revenue and decreased time and expense and travel and expense there in quite a significant way. Also from a training perspective, and I'll touch on that. The other big area is workplace safety, and I think this is going to start to drive not only to safer workplaces, but also we think about insurance liability and the ability to have employees trained on very hazardous situations now that can actually be done and experienced. We're working closely with a air products company, and they gave us a specific challenge that they wanted their drivers to be able to give them information or have an intense experience when they did something wrong. And you can do that in a virtual space. Obviously, you're not going to do that in the real world. So our ability to walk through step-by-step instructions, and when the gas is not being distributed properly, be able to provide an explosion or whatever other experience that might happen there so they can learn and then retest and go through that. So this is the first time we start to be able to significantly experience and go through and practice hazardous situations. I touched briefly on training before, but this is 24/7 training now. We also have a large trucking firm. They have 4,000 truck drivers with 90% turnover year over year. 3,600 drivers they're hiring every year. How are they training these people? They have to fly them into a central location for 3 days worth of training. We're now experimenting with, can they ship out a headset or even use their own mobile phone to download the application, snap it into a virtual reality headset that costs $100 and go through the pre-trip inspections and their training there remotely without having to fly them in. Because you can do this 24/7. And you can also eliminate the need for over-the-shoulder training. When someone's leaning over trying to see what's being done now everyone can participate in a virtual space, either with a trainer, remote trainer virtually in the room, or being live or recorded. You can have it recorded and have them watch that. And then obviously you can pull this up on demand, and this will significantly reduce travel and training costs, but also shorten the period of time in which it takes for people to be trained. And I think almost here, I'll jump past here. I'll end with my last slide here on things to be thinking about. One, if you're building products, think about the digital twin. Your product should have a digital twin or sister to your physical product. You're going to need those as you think about how these are going to be serviced and sold. Prioritize based on 3 different areas. Safety, if you have significant workplace safety areas. Location, if you have a lot of remote areas, and this is eliminate the travel and expense. And obviously complex products and processes are another key area to look at. Baseline these procedures, you need to know how long it takes to do it today. So when you apply this, you can start to understand the time savings, cost savings to get your business cases done. And this is happening now, and it's ramping quickly. So it's not something to be thinking about 4 or 5 years from now. Let's start to plan now and look at it and pilot it. So thank you, and hopefully that was educational.